Hey, welcome to the Selah Leaders podcast. My name is Nick Newman. I'm here today with my good friend Matt Sharrock and our podcast guide, Darren Zook. How we doing today, fellas?
Doing great. How you doing, Pastor Matt?
Hey, I'm great, man. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, if you are part of the Selah Leaders family, you've met him before. You serve here
Yeah.
on our staff at Propel Church, but also within Selah Leaders. I don't know how to define your role. Like, what do you do?
Everything you asked me to do.
Come on, I know that's right.
So I sit on the board for Selah Leaders, right?
Yeah,
And so I'm heavily involved in Lead Pastor Getaway. I serve on staff at Propel Church, and so pretty much everything that Pastor Nick has his hands in, I get to be a part of. So it's one of the
yeah.
perks.
Your like official job description is the like all other duties assigned by lead pastor.
Yeah,
Like that clause
yeah,
that you throw in that last line of the job description,
yeah,
it really like becomes part of what you do. And in this episode, it's going to be a little different. Normally, it's just Darren and I, but I wanted to bring you on today because there's a lot of leaders that listen to the podcast that lead from the second chair,
right,
and so they're not necessarily the ones in charge, but they serve another leader. And
right.
so I wanted to talk through what it looks like to deal with exhaustion as a second chair leader, but let's define it, first. What is a second chair leader?
You want me to answer that?
I do.
So second chair leader, I would define it as second in command, right? The right hand man of the organization or the church or the business that you're a part of. You are both leading, but also being led at the same time. And so I think that's the best way. It's very like all encompassing, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, and like, when we first started the church, I don't think that we had a lot of second chair leaders.
right.
Like I had a few people that we invested into and we hoped that they didn't kill anybody from one Sunday, to the next.
That was not me. That wasn't me.
But as our church has grown, and not just that, but like leading Selah leaders and other organizations, whatever my hands are in,
Yeah,
um, having people that are able to carry the vision
yeah,
um, to fruition. That's how like I really think about a second chair leader is somebody that not only hears the vision but runs with it
right.
and they carry it across the finish line, and you do that so well. So for those who are a second chair leader, like they serve, Darren, I consider Darren a second chair leader
Right.
in our organization as well. For those who are kind of in that role, uh, what does exhaustion look like for them? Because it is different. Like one of the things I know about
Yeah.
um, your vantage point really determines a lot. Like where you sit determines what you see,
Right. Right.
and so it's different. My seat to yours. What does exhaustion look like in your role?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is emotional and mental fatigue, which is that I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed out. Being in the second chair, we get the privilege of wearing just a lot of hats, right? And so sometimes that can lead you to that exhausting point. Ironically, this is an area that I fight pretty often because we love to teach about it and talk about it all the time, right? So
Yeah.
that's the craftiness of the enemy. Um, I was thinking about it earlier. I was trying to focus on getting ready for this podcast, but I actually had a slogan from a women's conference that we did 2 years ago stuck in my head, and that's because all of the hats that I wear were starting to intertwine and run together, and that's that kind of mental fatigue. But on the emotional side, I think that looks like really learning how to what you give your emotional energy to. So there's so many opportunities in the second chair. Um, a lot gets kind of kicked and passed your way, and you really have to learn you kind of have to take audit of what your emotional energy is, and then you have to learn like what you're going to give that to. If not, you're going to be exhausted at the end of the day, and every day you're going to say, man, I'm so tired, and your wife's going to be looking at you like, you said that every day last week. And so you have a responsibility. to kind of manage that emotional energy. But so that's a really big one. The emotional and mental fatigue. It's that overwhelmed, stressed out feeling. So as a second chair leader, you have all the authority, but no autonomy, right? So you do have a lot of authority, especially
Yeah.
like the way ours is. You empower me a lot, but at the same time, I'm still serving and reporting to a vision of another leader. So that can leave this emotional tension and this mental exhaustion between, especially, I'm sure we'll get into talking about carrying the heart of your leader.
Yeah.
But especially if you don't do that well, then every decision that you make is really difficult for you because you're like, I don't know my leader's heart, so I don't know if this is the right decision or not.
Yeah. I think when you're working on, what do I give my energy to and things like that, one of the hardest things for me, because, I used to sit in a second chair seat. Second chair is not second class. I love,
Come on.
like,
That's good.
I love Brandon Stewart says that.
Yeah.
Leading Second podcast. If you
Yeah.
aren't familiar with it, great resource there. Second chair is not second class,
Right.
right? So it's such an important role. I think
Right.
one of the hardest things for me to learn in that when I was trying to manage my energy, whether it was emotional, spiritual, physical, all that was just because it's on my plate doesn't mean I have to be the one who's doing it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we go, well, I have to do all of this stuff. In ministry, our goal is to equip people for ministry.
Right.
We don't do it alone, we go together. And so I think there's a big learning curve with people a lot of times to figure out just because it's my responsibility doesn't mean that I'm the one that has to do it.
Right.
I'm just responsible to make sure it gets taken care of.
Right.
And until you figure that out, you feel very overwhelmed with all the things that need to get done. And some leaders don't do a great job of, like, they know it's on their plate, they know it's their responsibility, but they run out of things, so they just pass it and like give it to somebody and forget about it. Then they get mad when their leader comes to them
Right.
and it's not done or it's not taken care of. Um, Learning, excuse me, learning to utilize and steward what you've been entrusted with while also realizing like you're called to build other leaders
Yeah.
is one of the greatest assets you can, develop and skill sets you can build as a second cheerleader.
Yeah. 100%. Big difference between delegating and dumping. Right. In fact, one of the ways I learned to manage my emotional energy and delegate better was he handed me a jar of pencils sitting at your desk at the old office, and you were like, "This is your emotional energy for the day. What are you going to give it to?" And I was like, I just walked away. And because second chair leaders, like he said, man, you are worth your weight in gold. You are
Yeah,
phenomenally gifted leaders. Most of you could probably go start your own organization right now,
yeah,
but you bless and you carry the heart of another leader in this season, and because of that, you want to do all the things because you're passionate about serving that vision, and you know where you're placed at for a reason. And it's really really difficult to learn how to delegate. And if you're high functioning like me, it's always tempting because it's like, well, I could do this in 15 minutes. It's
Yeah.
going to take me 2 hours to show somebody how to
yeah,
do it.
Yeah.
But you got to think in scalability, long term. Like, hey, in 6 months, this will be completely removed from my plate if I build somebody or a team of people
yeah,
to take care of this. Because at the end of the day, my pastor, this is my leader here, wants it to achieve a certain standard of excellence, and it's he doesn't really care who does it. He just wants to see it done, right?
yeah.
He just wants to see it done and done well.
Well, I think too, like, leadership becomes significantly less complicated when we start inviting people to do what we're already doing.
Mhm.
Right,
Like, for some
100%.
reason, when we look at leadership, sometimes we go, well, I don't have time to train anybody to do it. You were already planning on doing it.
Mhm.
So just quit doing it alone.
Right.
Bring people in, teach them how to do what you're already doing, and that's where leadership development happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the times where, I would call you and say, "Hey, I gotta go handle this problem. You're going with me,"
Yeah.
and we would get in the car afterwards and go, "Hey, so what'd you learn?"
Right.
And we'd
Yeah.
unpack it. And Darren, you've been in
Yeah.
in conversations like that as well. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a great opportunity. I think, you already said it, but, taking people with you in the journey is a huge part of leadership development. And it's a way, I think, also really to make sure that you are doing your part in bringing up new leaders beyond you,
yeah,
more second chair leaders, and potentially those second chair leaders turn into the leaders of future church plants or, future businesses down the road. And it's, that's part of the development process that we talk about.
Yeah, yeah,
it's got to be done. What are some other like uh, ways to identify, if you're exhausted? So you talked about decision fatigue,
yeah.
feeling that like weight and pressure.
Yeah, frustration and disengagement. So that's that kind of that feeling of being undervalued is where
Hmm.
I feel frustrated. And I'll tell you, if you don't know, I have first of all, and I don't just say this. I have an amazing senior leader. I'm very grateful for the leader he is. Darren and I could both speak to that,
Very much.
and I'm thankful for him. But you will be hurt by your leader at some point in time.
100%.
He's not perfect. Something that he says will offend me, and learning how to deal with that is very important because I tell people like this: the difference between a protege and a parasite is a parasite wants what's in its leader's hand. A protege wants what's on their heart,
Come on.
and my responsibility is to carry the heart and the vision of my leader. And whenever I start to get off track on that, I may feel a tension when he tells me no because I wanted things my way. And I think anytime you say to yourself, I know I'm right, this is the best, that's dumb. Your mind is under assault. Get rid of that because I'm telling you, it's going to be better for you to sit and understand hey, I'm actually in this position to help carry the vision of this organization or this church. And I never want my leader to feel like he's carrying me, but I always want him to feel like I'm supporting him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the
that's good.
minute that I decide that I am frustrated with something or I am disengaging for something because of selfish means, I've become a weight on him.
It's really good, man. And I think um, we're going to experience frustration, right? I mean, one of the things you said
Yeah,
was like, uh, you are going, like, I'm going to let you down.
yeah,
As a senior leader, um, I'm not Jesus.
right,
I love you, but I didn't die for your sins,
right,
and like I'm not
right.
perfect. I
A
don't
pair
have.
of Jordans you might, but my sins, no,
I know that's right. Um, but
know.
so I'm gonna make mistakes, and I think sometimes we have this expectation that our leaders are gonna have it all together, and then when they like fail us, our hopes and dreams are crushed. And we're not talking about
Right.
spiritual abuse or anything like that. Like, we live in a world that has very much, anytime you get told no,
Yeah.
is it's spiritual abuse. And it's like, no. There are times as a leader where I have to make a call that's not necessarily popular, but where I sit determines what I see. And I might see something
Yeah.
in the organization that's a little different. And so you might get a slow down or a let's pause, or, we're not going to move forward that way. Or,
Right.
hey, this is like, I'm grateful for your investment. I want to shift gears to make sure this aligns with where we're heading on the long run. I like to say it that being a senior leader is like, uh, standing over a 500-piece puzzle
Mhm.
and seeing every single piece
Yeah.
that's in play, while leading at a different level is like holding a group of puzzle pieces.
Yeah, yeah. I love that because I actually wrote it in some notes that I took. As a second chair leader, we should wear bifocals. So I need to be able to see the big picture that he sees, but I'm also responsible for the details. So I got to
Mhm.
see the little pieces that need to go in these little places. And the reason that second chair rest is so important is when I'm tired, what happens to my vision, right? You think about driving down the road, you're tired, things get blurry, you
Yeah,
start to lose clarity,
that's good.
and I can't be seeing the things that he's seeing or understanding what my leader is requesting or requiring when I get into lack of rest. And so,
Yeah.
um, oh man, you said something else really good that I was going to comment on. But we're just going to have to roll
Who
forward. It'll
knows?
come back.
But
Uh,
what I will say is like, um you talked about knowing your leader's heart.
yeah,
And I think part of the reason why our relationship works really well is even when I let you down, or I don't give you the answer you were looking for, or you get frustrated, whatever, like, you know my heart, you know I care
Right.
about you, you know I love you. How do you go in, like, building that relational equity with a leader, like the person who leads you? How do you learn their heart?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is we hang out. Like literally, we just hang out and we have a ton of fun together. And so I would encourage you as a second chair leader to not just do ministry or work or whatever that is. The reality is, him and I put out a ton of fires together, but we also have a lot of fun together. And I very much fight for those opportunities for him because his innate design and desire is going to be to run, 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 run. Part of my job is to make sure that he is resting. And a lot of ways that we do that is we rest together.
Yeah.
Like we find commonalities. So I'm sitting in a room right now, and this person has gotten into Nikes and Jordans because that's a shared interest with Pastor Nick.
Mm.
Him and I'm wearing a fly fishing shirt right now. Him and I like to go fly fishing together. And so I've found things that he likes, and I have gotten interested in those as well. So we can share things outside of the heartache of ministry or whatever it is that you do on a job. And that's helped me to get to know you better outside of that, while also removing like that tension and that pressure to perform, like just
Yeah.
to get to know somebody. I would also say it is a commitment and an intentionality that I live my wife with, and not my wife, my life with, in this season. Um, it is to protect with a tenacity, guarding your heart. Like what I mean by that is, um, I know your heart so well now that I will fight for it in moments where I'm choosing not to be offended, right? So we call it benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
and that's a ministry term. But I'm choosing not to be offended. I'm choosing to
Mm.
pardon him. I'm choosing to say, hey, you know what? He said this. It came off a little, but maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm just a little whiny today, you know. And so I kind of work through things like that. But also, man, um, one of my biggest regrets early on in leadership is not having the hard conversation immediately. So one thing he does really well is if I do something that was frustrating or offensive, you don't sit on it. You come directly to me and you say, "Hey, man, when you did this, this was really distracting," and that's fighting for unity. Like that is how we fight for unity. We
Yeah.
don't give space or time to gossip, to dishonor. We go directly to the source and we say, "Hey, this is what happened, and I didn't like this," and we have the conversation right away,
Yeah.
so that there is no time for me to be frustrated with you for an extended period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
And it that sorry, I laughed because that was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah, it was a recent thing that I
Yeah,
thought about.
yeah,
Yeah,
and but it is like, um I I I think sometimes we try and coddle the leaders beneath us a little too much, in that, like, one of the reasons why sometimes leaders think we're perfect is because we that's the image we project to them.
right,
And so if I feel frustrated as a leader, I have a responsibility to the people I lead to say, "Hey, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that this was not your intention,
right,
but here's what happened,
yeah,
and here's how I interpreted it."
right,
Now, we don't have to agree on that at all,
yeah,
but based on where I sit, this is what I saw. And then we get to address that and deal with it. And I think sometimes, um, internally, it's very rare that you will go high within our organization if I don't feel relational connectivity to
Very
you,
much. Yeah.
right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
I don't have the desire to spend time with you, to grow in that relationship, and you don't have to, like, just love all my shared interests. Like, most of the time you just have to be an enjoyable person
right,
to be around.
yeah,
Like, people who are very negative or just have a ton of excuses,
right,
I don't have a high, like, tolerance for them um in putting them into my inner circle.
yeah,
um but
Well, I think the other side of it too, though, is you don't want to pour into a leader who can't take feedback well, who can't, who's constantly making excuses for every single thing that happened or something
yeah,
along those lines. And I think that's the thing is it's consistent feedback. It's being able to provide that consistent feedback, and I think that comes with relational equity.
yeah,
That's the only way you're going to be able to do that and not take offense to, something that you said. I think back on situations, conversations that you and I have had, and it's like, hey, like I don't take offense to it. Yeah, it could hurt in the moment, but it doesn't mean that I take offense to it, because that constant feedback and that constant communication, there's so much relational equity there that it doesn't hold the same impact as what it would as if it's a leader within a business who you have no direct relationship with,
Right.
but they're up your management chain and they're coming to you with something.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I think sometimes like because pre-Jesus I was a drug dealer, spent a little time in the business world. And like in the business world, popular thing is like the crap sandwich is what
Mm,
people call it. It's like I have to tell you what you did really well, I have to give you crap, and then I
Right.
have to tell you what you
Yeah, I
did
don't
really
like
well.
that.
I hate those.
Yeah.
I think it's a it's a poor feedback culture
mm,
Yeah.
that requires me to have to pat you on the back before I address something
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Healthy culture is you're celebrated enough
Right.
that when we have the hard conversation,
That's good.
we just have the hard
Right.
conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
And most hard conversations aren't really that hard if you, as a leader, don't build them up in your mind to become this really big thing you've rehearsed for 3 weeks
Yeah.
before you just sit down and go, hey, when you did this, it frustrated me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
100%.
just run the play fresh and fast.
And
That's
that
how feedback should be. And it should be fairly emotionless in
right. It needs
that,
to be objective.
yeah, because you,
Yeah.
you can't just go, like, you can't be hot headed. I think that's one of the other reasons why feedback works really well with us is because it's not, I stay level headed as a
Yeah.
leader.
You rationalize very quickly. Some people don't think you have emotions. It's not
Thank you.
that. It's that you're good at rationalizing things.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. You're
I
welcome.
received that.
Yeah.
I received that. Well, we're kind of running close to
I got one more big one that
time.
I want to
Do a
share though.
big one.
Can we
Do it.
do it? Can
Come
we
on.
do that?
Let's do it.
So,
Let's
and
hit it.
and this word, if you laugh when I say it, I'll know I'll say it wrong. But this is role ambiguity.
Okay. I
Come
think
on,
you
I
did it
said
right.
that
You
right.
nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the best word to describe it. And what I mean by that is, and this is it, like, and honestly, this is an opportunity that we face at Propel Church sometimes. That is clarity on what the heck you do. Like as a second chair leader, we were just kind of talking about it. You do all of these things. Well, sometimes that can be frustrating because there's something that you see within your organization that needs to be worked on,
Yeah.
but you don't know who in the world is responsible for it.
Right.
And if you get into the habit of taking responsibility for it, you're now probably overstepping a boundary into
Hmm.
another team or somebody else's role or something like that. So one thing we can do there is we can ask for clarity. And I
Yeah.
think it's something that, right, Pastor Nick planted a church 7 years ago.
Something like that.
Right. So some of those things, like, they come with time. As you build systems, you
Yeah.
build structures, you build pathways, and all of that. Some of those role descriptions come into play. And so that is kind of where we're at in this season, where we have a team of 4 executive leaders, and sometimes our roles intertwine like that. And if it's everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's
That's
responsibility,
right.
which can be really frustrating. So I want to encourage you to have those conversations as well. That for us may look like, hey, Pastor Nick, I felt like this was nobody's responsibility, and maybe you're upset because this didn't get done, but I didn't know that I was supposed to do it. That's a
Yeah.
tension, and if you allow that to sit, that stress, that mental fatigue will wear you out and cause restlessness.
It's really good, man. And so I actually had like a couple things of like tips for leaders, and we talked about feedback was actually one of my big
Boom.
tips of like working with second chair leaders. But the other one was get really good at asking questions.
Mm,
Yeah.
And when you are a leader that is leading other people, you've got to become a great question asker. Questions like when someone comes to you with a problem, if you're developing leaders, well, what do you think we should do?
right.
Yeah.
Like, it's very easy for a high capacity leader to become the chief problem solver in an organization, and that's an easy thing for me because problem solving is a high gift set
Yeah.
Right.
for me,
Yeah.
and typically those are like very creative solutions,
Yeah.
and that's my gift. But if I'm gonna build leaders, I have to get them to think differently.
Right.
So, what do you think we should do about it?
Yeah.
Or when we're talking about a problem, hey, whose responsibility Who's going to run with that?
Right.
Yeah,
Who's going to run the ball across
that's
the
good.
finish
Yeah.
line?
Well, we did that recently,
Yeah.
right? We had some stuff we were working through with discipline, and he kind of sat there and allowed the team to make the decisions and ask the right questions. And
Yeah.
yeah, you do that really well.
Well, I'm working on it.
Yeah. But it
But that's leadership, right?
right.
It's like I didn't used to do it at all. Now I'm learning to implement it,
Yeah.
and it's developing.
Well, you know what it teaches us too is not to bring a problem without a solution.
Come
Come
on,
on,
I know
Like,
that.
what's more annoying than when somebody
Yeah,
brings you a problem, but
it's
they
so
have no
true.
solution? It's like, hey, if you didn't know, I got 1,000 other problems on my plate right now.
Yeah,
So, do you have a suggestion? And if I do that, I've spent time, I'll say, hey, I don't have a solution to this, and I'm really sorry. I've been racking my brain. It's driving me nuts. It's something that needs to be addressed. Do you have anything on this? I'll let my leader know in advance. Hey, this isn't for laziness or lack of effort. I just don't know how to fix this, and I see a problem.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's and I think you've got to find one of the best things a second chair leader can do is find the gift set of their leader and then invest their time and energy into it.
Come on.
that's good.
If you do that, let them live their unique gifts.
Yeah.
Your teams will grow, things will thrive.
Yeah.
So, Darren, what's our question
Yeah.
from our
So
listener?
yeah. So each episode we take a leader submitted question and ask it of Pastor Nick, as well as we're gonna ask the same question of Pastor Matt today and let you both respond. But uh, today's leader submitted question comes from Kyle, and he asks, "What does your Sabbath day look like?"
I'll let you go first, and then I'll land the plane.
Okay, that sounds great.
You got
So it's kind
40 seconds.
okay, kind of a loaded question because it looks different all the time.
Right.
Pastor Nick has a great teaching. I don't know where it is. Maybe he can tell you. But you need three different areas of rest, right? Soul rest, spiritual rest, physical rest. So sometimes my Sabbath day requires me to sleep a lot. Sometimes I do things like go fly fishing.
Amen.
I take personal time, and sometimes I just literally spend time with the Lord, reading and praying and praising and worshiping all day long. It is whatever I need most in that season. And the important thing for me as a Christian is that Jesus is the Lord of my Sabbath. So he gets to determine how I rest on my Sabbath day.
That's good.
Come on, that was less than 40 seconds. And it was like the most saved answer. I might, I caught the Holy Ghost.
Come on.
No, I think the big thing about Sabbath is it's different for everybody, but the goal of Sabbath is connection with the Lord.
Come on.
Yeah.
And
So good.
so, whatever it looks like for you on that day, for me, sometimes it is like it's a lounge kind of. I'm chilling. I'm not doing anything. I'm running a high paced season. There are times like for me, one of the things that brings joy to my soul is spending time with other like pastors and other
Mm-hmm.
leaders. And so
Yeah.
I might, I've rented out a bay at Top Golf and just invited a whole bunch of pastors to come hang out
Yeah.
on a Sabbath. I go fly fishing, go golfing. Um, Whatever you do, the big thing is that it's consistent and that it has a rhythm. I think sometimes we go, well, I wish I just knew what to do. Like, okay, then ask the Lord. If you
Right.
have access, I I guarantee you, if you started asking God if He wanted to spend time with you, He'd say yes. God, how do you want me to spend time with you?
Yeah.
He'll guide you and direct you,
That's good.
Yeah.
and then just do that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and continue to invest there. So, man, thanks so much for being on the podcast
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.
Thanks if you are watching this and you're on YouTube right now, hit the subscribe button. If you're on Spotify, do whatever Spotify does.
Yeah.
Be sure to share this with a friend. There's Apple Podcasts as well. We're available on all streaming platforms. I don't even know what all those platforms are, but we're available. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this month's episode of the Selah Leaders Podcast. Darren and I are so grateful that you chose to spend some time with us today to check it out. But do us a favor, be sure to hit the like button,
Yep.
subscribe, comment, share it with a friend, family, or another leader in your life. It would truly make a huge difference.
Yeah, and if you'd like more information, jump over to selahleaders.com.